when it comes to understanding a language, once you understand it really well, it never goes away.
And 2 hours ago, you started to learn Icelandic. How fluent are you?
Very fluent.
Flashcards.
Do I have to give you the diplomatic answer? Or do you have?
Does dating help you learn a language, or
I don't know where
do
you want
you
to go with this.
do languages help get dates?
So you're asking me, do I pick up girls to learn and improve my languages, or?
The bidirectional translation method. So, could you explain this to a 6-year-old?
Here's how it works.
Hello, everybody. So today I'm with a special guest here, who has kindly accepted to be here. So if you do not know him, he's Luca Lampariello, a famous polyglot who has studied more than 15 languages. And what is impressive about him is that he's able to speak fluently 10 of these languages. And
are you sure? I'm kidding.
No, it's very pleasure to have you, Luca, today.
Thank you.
And thank you for accepting my invitation to join me. And it's a very touching moment because when I was still in Sri Lanka, I was watching your videos, and you were a great inspiration for me to learn languages.
Thank you.
And to join the path to become a polyglot. So I'm very humbled to have you here.
Thank you.
And it's a special honor. So today we are going to talk about Luca and how he learned languages. So I've prepared several questions to ask him, and we're going to just deep dive and explore how Luca's language journey has been. So without any further ado, let's start, I would say.
Yep.
So the first question is going to be about the first foreign language you learned, Luca. Mm-hmm. So I know that is not Italian, because you are Italian, and it's English. So I've read your book, which is called 10 Essential Rules for Smart Language Learning.
Great that you remember the title. I don't remember it myself.
So I repeated it several times before. So anyway, so in this book, you specifically mentioned that in the school teaching system, you did not enjoy learning English. When you were, for example, taught English in school, you didn't learn it properly, and everything changed when you got your private tutor, Susan. Mm-hmm. And then you start to like the language and explore it more and learn it much quicker and efficiently. And that was, I think, the game changer of your English language learning. So the question is, what is that made this difference? What was different from the school classroom language setting, and what you did with Susan to improve your English?
So first of all, thank you for the lovely introduction. It's nice to know that I was your inspiration when you were in high school. It makes me is a reminder of how old I've gotten, actually. Jokes aside, I think that the main reason why speaking and interacting and working with Susan is the fact that I finally started enjoying what I was doing. So I was not learning languages, and I was not learning English in particular because I had to, but rather because I wanted to. So while in the classroom with my English teacher, I was just going through very boring exercises, very boring material. We were not speaking that much. With Susan, it was the opposite. So Susan gave me videotapes. For example, she was giving me movies. She was recording movies for me that I could watch, and those were movies I wanted to watch. So I asked her, hey, could you record, I don't know, Terminator 2 or The Fly or other American cult movies? And I was very eager to watch one movie every week. And that alone changed everything, because apart from the exercises, apart from the training that I did with her, speaking with her, she was correcting my texts, and of course she was correcting my mistakes. I was consuming a lot of content I liked. So I started enjoying English for real. And I was really looking forward to meeting her every week. And that made a world of difference, because I was learning every day. After coming back from school, I was just sitting down and reading books, watching movies, and that changed. In a matter of, I think, a year, I moved from, being able to say even the easiest word. I was not able to string sentences together, not even the easiest sentences together. I moved from that to speaking the language fluently. So much so, in fact, that when I was in Ireland for the first time, I visited Ireland for the first time, people thought I was an American. And that was quite the encourage to continue.
Oh, that's an amazing compliment. An Italian could have learning English, I think.
Yeah, people thought, hey, were you born in America? Did you have American parents? And I was astounded because I thought, okay, well, just 2 years prior, I could barely string a sentence together. And now people think I'm a native, or maybe, native-like. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so it boils down to the consuming the content that you like. Where with Susan, you learned what you liked, and you asked her to do things that you like, record the movies and stuff. Whereas in school, it's something that was forced to you, even without any your consent, what you would
without
learn.
My permission.
Without your permission, they had the agenda to what the curriculum, which did not take into consideration your opinion or whatsoever.
Yes.
So whereas having the private teacher completely change the content that you learned.
Yes, and I want to stress the fact that when you go to school, and you have to go to school sooner or later, then you have in your curriculum some languages, right? English is everywhere and you need to learn, but maybe you need to learn it. But maybe you're learning French or you're learning German or Russian, depending on the country. And nobody tells you why you're learning this language, right? So it's forced upon you and you think, oh, well, English or French or German or whatnot are other subjects that I have to learn in order to navigate this complicated existence. So you don't think about why you're learning a language. And I believe that knowing your why, knowing the reasons, the motives that drive you, that compel you, that push you to learn every day really makes a difference in the short term as well as in the long term. So before, when I was going to school, I did not know why I was learning English. After Susan, I realized I really wanted to learn English because I almost wanted to blend in the American society. I projected myself in the future speaking English with Americans, living in America. It didn't happen in the end, but it doesn't matter. Using the language with real people, with native speakers, that changed everything, changed my perspective and gave me the perspective of, made me understand why, the real reason why you're learning a language is to have a better life through all the amazing experiences you can have if you speak 1, 2, 3, 4, or 10 languages. Just one language can change the entire world, your world.
It's amazing how about this impact a teacher could have on the student's life, and you are a perfect example of that.
It all started with Susan.
Okay, so something that you often recommend or talk about is when you're learning foreign language, to have a visualization of future where you would be fluently speaking it in a very specific setting. So for example, you say when you're learning German, you imagine yourself in a beach surrounded by German friends and cracking jokes and listen to German pop music. And so how important is it to customize or visualize a future where you would be using the language with ease? How do you think it's relevant when it comes to language learning?
Language learning is a long road. It takes a long time to learn a language. Some people think you can learn a language in a matter of weeks or months. It's not true. If you hear that on YouTube or on the internet, it takes years. And since it's a long road and there's a lot of obstacles and there's ups and downs, and life is about ups and downs, the ebb and flow of life, as they say, there will come a time where you're going to question the reason or the reasons why you're learning a language. You're going to tell yourself sometimes, oh, grammar, I don't know, you're learning Russian, grammar is too difficult, or I can't speak, or I can't understand. You will have these moments, and I think that at that moment, the most important thing is to go back and think about your vision. Why is it that you're learning this language? How do you visualize yourself moving forward? How do you picture yourself using that language in the future? With whom? How? Where? In which circumstances? I think that really makes a difference. And in my case, when I was learning English, I was watching these movies that Susan gave me. I saw myself using some of the lines that the actors were saying in real life, meeting people, going to the United States, and that the same thing happened with French, because at the time I was also learning French. I was watching one movie every night in 1996 when I discovered that I could watch French television. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, I'm going to speak with Sophie Marceau. Sophie Marceau is this beautiful French actress whom I saw for the first time in this cult movie, La Boum. And in the back of my mind, every single day, I visualize myself talking to her, in Paris. And that really helped me stay on course, to continue learning, learning French every day, English, French, German. Then, you talked about my vision for German. For every language, I have a vision, and that vision, I craft it. I literally write it down, and I keep it next to me every time I sit down. And it's not only in the back of my mind. It's just something visual that I can see. I sit down, and if and when I get tired, and that will happen, or discouraged because grammar is difficult, I can't understand something, etc., I'm reminded of the real reason why I'm learning.
Yeah, really have this this pictorial view of the future, sort of more of like law of attraction, if you want to call it that way. So it's connecting yourself with your ultimate goal and being surrounded all the time, as much as possible, with your goals. I think that's key here.
Yes, Einstein used to say that imagination is stronger than knowledge. Einstein imagined these experiments, these thought experiments, to come to the conclusions he came to. And he says imagination is powerful, our mind is powerful. Use your imagination to your advantage to project yourself in the future and create a meaningful life that is going to happen in some form, maybe in a slightly different form than you can imagine, but it's going to happen if you stick to it,
Yeah. So about a year ago, you started to learn Turkish, which I think is your 16th language, maybe?
Yes.
What
15. If you consider Latin, which is a dead language, it's a 16th language, but I don't consider Latin as one of the languages I speak.
Fair enough. What inspires you to keep learning new languages, and how has this journey of language learning shaped your personal and professional life?
Okay, so first of all, let's start with the obvious. The obvious is that if you speak multiple languages, you have many more opportunities in life. You can get to know people, you can travel to any given country, and you can not only get by, but thrive in a different environment. You can get a job. My current job revolves around languages, right? But I think that the real advantage of speaking foreign languages is that it shapes and improves your overall vision of life. It's really interesting for me sometimes to observe different foreigners talk to each other, and sometimes there's some misunderstandings that come from different cultures, different standpoints, because every individual carries with them a different culture, different story, a different history of the country that they represent. And if you speak all these languages, you have a thorough understanding of how the whole thing happens, how people interact, right? You're more patient towards other people, you understand their point of view. So I think from a philosophical standpoint, it makes you a better citizen of the world. You understand the world better. We, as humans, we tend to be proud of our intelligence, but we also have a lot of limitations. Sometimes we think we have a lot of prejudices. There's a lot of prejudice towards other peoples, other cultures. I think language learning gives you an insight into the human mind and the human world as a whole. I think at the end of the day, we're all the same. We tend to think that person coming from Africa, Asia, America is different, but fundamentally we all want the same things. We all function the same way. And I think through the language, through the lens of language, or through the language glass, if you want to put it that way, you can actually understand, unravel the beauty of the human mind and of humankind in general.
It's like a different antenna you could tune to, like, get more information and then like have a better understanding of the humanity.
Yes. Also, I like using this metaphor. I call it the metaphor of the prism. You have a prism that gets hit by light, and the light that looks white to us, right, at first sight, then gets, you can see the different components of the light itself, right, of the rainbow. And I think language learning works like that. The more languages you speak, the more you can show the entire rainbow of your personality. I don't think if you speak another language, you get another soul or you become a different person. I think that you show different sides of your personality. Each language shows your version within a different culture. So when I speak English, I show my American Luca. When I speak Italian, I show my Italian Luca. When I speak German, I show my German version. And it's amazing because the way I act, think, and even use my my hands, gestures, gestures, and what I say and how I say it and when I say it in which circumstances changes according to the language. And it's not that I'm different, I'm just showing different sides of my personality through different languages.
And how is your Turkish personality coming now?
Well, it's not good enough to have formed a personality, to have formed another side of my personality.
It's still a work in progress.
It's work in progress, yes. That's exactly how they define it. It's work in progress. I think that you form a different side of your personality once you reach a certain level, and once a language becomes an integral part of your personality, a part of your life. I haven't gotten to that point yet with Turkish, but I'm working on it, work in progress, as you say.
And 2 hours ago, you started learning Icelandic. How fluent are you?
Very fluent. It took me 2 days. It took me only 2 days. Then I got on television like Daniel Tammet, and then I got to speak fluent Icelandic.
So jokes apart, which language did you find the most challenging to learn? Because some languages have different scripts and some do not. So each language has its own flavor. How did you overcome these difficulties when it's very challenging? What was the most difficult language you learned?
I'd say, without a shadow of a doubt, that the most difficult language is Japanese. Was Japanese for me. I gotta confess that I did not learn it to a level where I can use it, to a level where it's part of my life. And this depends on a number of factors. I think the most important factor was that I did not expect it to be so difficult, and I did not approach it the right way. You have to consider, for those who learned Japanese, know this, that Japanese is not only difficult because it has a different syntax, the way we form sentences, but also the way they form thoughts and the way they use the language in everyday life. This is, in linguistics, it's called pragmatics. How do you use the language in certain situations? What gestures do you do? How do you react to certain situations? What do you say? Every language is entangled with its own culture, and you have to understand that as well. Now, if I'm learning, say, Greek, which is a similar language to a certain extent to Italian, but kind of also distant, the reassuring fact is that you use the language in the same way as you use the language in Italian. So just to give an example, there are certain expressions that can be literally translated from Italian into Greek, and they can be used in the same situations. For example, I can say, "Paro την κατάσταση στα χέρια μου." It means I'm taking the situation in my own hands. This is the literal translation, and you can use it in certain circumstances in exactly the same way. This is just one example. So Italian and Greek are kind of different. It's really difficult for Italian to master Greek because they have a lot of interesting idiosyncrasies and quirks when it comes to grammar, verb conjugations, verb aspect, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you use the language in a very similar way. On the other hand, with Japanese, it's completely different. It's another world, it's another culture, it's another vision, it's another way of using the language. So apart from the objective difficulty of actually learning the language, which is difficult because it's so different, the culture that comes with it is also so different that in order to master it, you have to live it. You have to have Japanese friends, and possibly you have to live in Japan for quite some time, which is not the case for other languages, European languages that share a certain vision. European languages are different, but a lot of these languages are used in very much in the same way because we belong to the same block, belong to the same culture.
You live in Europe, so you can take a train or like a quick flight, and you are there, you can practice it.
That's another factor, proximity. Proximity means that I can fly to Budapest, and in an hour and a half, I'm in Budapest and I can practice the language. And proximity counts because I know psychologically that if I wanted to, I could spend a month in Budapest and practice Hungarian. Well, that is not possible, or it's much more difficult to do if I wanted to, on the spur of the moment, on a whim, hey, I'm gonna fly to Japan. It's gonna cost a lot of money, and you can't stay there just because, hey, I want to spend a month in Japan. So there's a lot of factors that align that made it difficult for me to learn Japanese. But I will go back to it sooner or later because it's a language I'm really fascinated by. It's a language that fascinates me to no end, and I'll go back to it.
All right. And what was the easiest language to learn and why?
This is easier,
Okay.
in the sense that easier to reply, easier to answer, because when I started learning Portuguese, that came much more naturally because I already had Spanish under my belt. I'm Italian. I already spoke French fluently. So 3 Romance languages, and Portuguese was the 4th Romance language that I had decided to learn, and that came quite easy for me, except its pronunciation, which has a lot of quirks. It's very special because in Portuguese from Portugal, we're talking specifically about Portuguese from Portugal, they tend to have they call it fechado, right? Fechado means it's
closed.
It's closed. I don't know if you have the equivalent expression in English, but basically when you speak Italian or Spanish, just to give an example, if you say the word Portogallo, which is the country, right? Portogallo in Italian, Portugal in Spanish, but in Portuguese from Portugal, you say Portugal. So you don't say Portugal, you say Portugal. And
you
this
do
happens
like
in
quick
everywhere.
lip movement.
Yes, it's not P-O-R, it's Portugal.
Portugal.
And this is just one example, So it's much more difficult when it comes to pronunciation, but overall the language is relatively easy, And it was easy at the time when I decided to learn it in 2008.
And did your Spanish interfere with Portuguese?
That's an excellent question. I would say it did not interfere that much, maybe at the beginning, but it actually helped me. It helped me at the beginning because knowing Spanish and knowing Italian really made it easier for me to understand, the structure and learn the vocabulary, which is very, very similar to Spanish. If you see the 2 languages just written, it's almost the same. Pronunciation-wise, completely different. It's a difficult answer. It's a difficult question actually to answer because there's always a certain degree of interference between these languages, between Spanish and Portuguese, between Portuguese and Italian and Spanish. So I think it helped me more than got in the way. But sometimes it happens that when I speak Portuguese, which is a language I don't speak very often, Spanish comes to the fore because it's a dominant language in my head. So sometimes if I'm particularly rusty, Portuñol comes out. Portuñol is this mix of Spanish and Portuguese. So if I don't know a word in Portuguese, I just tend to use Spanish. People will still understand, but the reason why Spanish is interfering with Portuguese is because Spanish is much more dominant than Portuguese, and I've been using Spanish much more through the years. If I also had the chance of using Portuguese on a daily basis, I think the 2 languages would be on par, would be more or less at the same level.
Okay. And can you share with us a moment in your life where speaking multiple languages created a unique opportunity or like life-changing opportunity that you can remember?
Well, I would say first that it was the 22nd of May, 2008, and on a whim, I decided to make a YouTube video. And I would say that was a fateful moment that changed my life, changed the course of my life. It sounds very dramatic, but it's actually true. Because I had the opportunity of sharing my language skills and most of all my love for language learning, and that changed everything because after I recorded that one fateful video on that fateful day in May 2008, then I got a lot of positive reactions, and I decided to record more videos, to share more knowledge, to share my skills, and I reached out to other polyglots, and here we are. After 15 years, I made a YouTube video. I founded my Smart Language Learning Academy. I co-founded the Polyglot conferences around the world, and I work with languages. I worked for 10 years as a coach, and now I'm working as the principals of my Smart Language Learning Academy. I think it's a privilege, and the privilege is to do what you like, to work with your passion, and most of all, to help people get better and improve their language learning. I think it's a privilege because we live in a world where we have a lot of information, we have the internet, but a lot of people lack understanding of how to use their brain to better learn languages. When someone says, for example, that I'm a genius, I must be a genius because I speak 14 or 15 languages, I always reply that, and I'm not being humble about it, I don't want to sound falsely humble. The reason why I speak 14 languages is because I learn how to use my brain efficiently, and it's something that everybody can do, provided that, of course, they're motivated enough to pursue.
You have to train first how to have a right mindset.
Well, you have to align three main factors: your mindset, your skill set, and your organization. Mindset is your mental approach to something. For example, if you have a positive mindset, you know that you can learn something. There's a beautiful book which is called Mindset by Carol Dweck that talks about that. Mindset is one of the most important things, the psychological factor that makes a huge difference whether you're going to be successful or not in language learning as in life. Skill set means the strategies that you implement in order to learn more efficiently. Just to give you an example, an inefficient strategy is to try to speak from the get-go. It's possible, it depends on the individual, but trying to speak when you still don't have enough input, trying to learn grammar for the sake of learning grammar without getting a lot of listening and reading, try to learn vocabulary by crafting lists of words out of context. These are just three examples of what it means to implement strategies that are not efficient and that they come from years and years of school where they inculcated false and inefficient methods that we take for granted because we think that the school is the place where we're supposed to learn.
Yeah, verb list, adjective list, just throw them away.
That's a recipe for disaster. So you have the mindset, you have the skill set, and you have the organization. The organization is all about knowing how to make sure that you learn every day for a long time. Because, as I was discussing with another polyglot, Richard Simcott, at the end of the day, language learning is a simple thing, but not easy to do. And the simple thing is you sit down, you learn the language, you get exposed to the language 1 hour a day, 2 hours if you have time, but nowadays it's more difficult, and you learn to learn the way you like. I believe that there's no one-size-fits-all strategy. You have to figure out what works for you. And once you figure out what works for you and you sit down and you learn every day for an hour a day, you learn the way you like, then, fluency is bound to happen sooner or later. Sooner rather than later, actually.
Yeah. And so this event in your life was creating a YouTube channel that paved you to like different possibilities and connecting with other people.
I would say that is the most important that's without a doubt is the definitive moment where you have a breakthrough moment where there's a before and there's an after. But along the entire time life of my life, there's a lot of things that happened when it comes to connecting with people I love, when it comes to finding a romantic relationship, whether to find a job. I think the first milestone was that one. The second milestone happened in Paris. And it was December 2010. I had just moved to Paris and I was in a chambre de bonne. Now, for those who are not familiar with the concept, a chambre de bonne is a very small room where the maidens back in the day, at the beginning, I think of the 19th century, this was a space dedicated to them because they were attending the family of rich people. So
it's on the highest floor of
highest
the
floor.
building.
Very small space. I was with my girlfriend at the time, my French girlfriend. I had just moved to Paris. And to tell you the truth, I did not know exactly what to do with my life, as it happens with a lot of people. I just finished my career as an engineer, meaning I had just gotten a degree in engineering. And I did not know exactly what to do with my life. And I had made this YouTube video back in the day, 22nd of May, 2008. So I was already, on YouTube and visible. And I got an email in a moment where I still remember the emotional charge that moment had, because I was sad. It was snowing. I was in the small space. I was fighting with my ex-girlfriend because we were confined in a small space. Claustrophobic. And I did not know what to do. I was thinking, what am I doing here? What am I going to do with my life? And then I got this email, and this email just said from a Hungarian guy, Donut, and the guy just wrote, hey, do you want to be my Italian teacher? Do you want to teach me Italian? And I thought, why not, right? I thought, of course, I can teach you Italian, no problem. And I remember back in the day that there was something in my heart, when you feel something, you can't put quite a word to it, but that, you have to follow your heart rather than what society tells you to do. So society was telling me, my father, in general, they were pointing towards a career in engineering because that was the path that I had chosen university-wise. But my heart, my gut feeling, if you want to use it another term, my gut feeling was telling me, this is not your path. You got to do something different. And that was, the spark. That email sparked my desire to take another route that was much more difficult, It was not a well-trodden path, as they say.
You had no experience before. You had been trained, maybe, to be a teacher. But you knew
been.
how to learn a language.
But don't tell Donut. Huh? Donut, if you're watching this video. No, I did not know much. I did not know anything. I think that getting a degree is fine if you want to be a teacher. But I think that the most important thing is experience and passion. I really like a sentence that I read somewhere that. Successful entrepreneurs do not hire for competence, they hire for mindset, they hire for attitude. So if you, for example, are a competent person, but your mindset is negative, you don't feel like working, you're not passionate about what you're doing, then you're not going to do a great job. So I think that the most important thing is to have passion and to have the mindset of learning your craft. And that's why when Donut asked me, do you want to be a teacher? We started, I learned on the fly, and I was passionate, and I was thinking, okay, the Kaizen philosophy is learning a little bit, improve a little bit every day. And that's what I did. I just talked to him, understood his problems, understood what he wanted to learn, how he wanted to learn, and then we worked together because, I started my career as a language coach, and then I improved tenfold by doing. You learn by doing fundamentally,
Yeah, very much true. And the butterfly effect of your YouTube channel, I think I'm here today.
Butterfly effect, right?
And I don't know how many other people started YouTube channels and started learning languages because of you showcased what is possible by doing this YouTube video, and how many will be in future. That's I think the weight it carries is very hard to describe.
Something that happened 2 years ago when I was in Siena. I was walking with my Polish friend, and all of a sudden a Turkish guy comes to me, and he was with his girlfriend, and says something along the lines of, "Hey Luca, I'm your biggest fan, and you've changed my life because now I live here. I got myself a girlfriend. I live in Italy. I'm studying all because of you." Now, I mean, maybe it's too much. It's not just because of me. It's his own merit.
But you sparked.
But you sparked it. Yeah, and this happened quite a few times on the street when people stop me on the street and say, "You made a big impact on my life," and this is the most beautiful compliment I can ever get.
It's amazing. So let's get a bit technical.
Mm-hmm.
So you often mention the bidirectional translation method that you discovered while learning German using the Augustini
You're
course.
very well informed. I'm impressed.
I did my research, I think.
You did your research.
And so you discovered that it could work not only for you through teaching, and you experimented with others, and you discovered it could work for others. So you started to promote this to help language learners benefit from this. So could you explain this to a 6-year-old? How would you do it?
Okay, so how much time do we have? To a 6-year-old, and how much time? Like 2 minutes? It's gonna be tough.
No, you can take more than 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Fundamentally, here's how it works. The bidirectional translation is not a method to learn a language per se, meaning, by the end of it, you speak a language fluently. Is just a method in order to understand the foundation, the basic structure of a language, right? So you want to get your foot in the language before you move on to the next stage. So what I do for 3 months, I get a book, for example, Assimil is one book that offers material in 2 languages. One page, say, in your target language. Let's say that I'm learning French, and the other page, the same text translated, the same text of a dialogue, for example, translated into my own native language, Italian, or a language I know well. Could be English or other languages. So you have a text, let's say a language learning material for beginners that contain basic dialogues, right? Basic dialogues. Hi, I am Luca. How are you? In whatever language. And what I do is I analyze text by text, dialogue by dialogue. First, I listen and read multiple times. This is the first part of the method. And it's a relatively straightforward thing, meaning the first part is understanding the text by reading and listening, just listening after reading and listening. If you read and listen, you can understand the language because you can see it, you can see the words, you can hear the sounds, and you can connect the two together, right? Forming a sound map, so to speak. And you have the text in your native language, which helps you compare the structure of the 2 languages. Plus, you have some grammar notes that explain the points that you cannot understand just by comparing the languages. If you're learning 2 languages that are very similar, this is relatively easy, and you can even almost avoid grammar notes because the languages are very similar, Spanish and Italian. But if you're learning a language that is quite different, and this is the case for most languages, given your native language, then a little bit of grammar notes help you understand, right? The beginning and the most important principle, and this is something that a lot of beginners get wrong, is that at the beginning, when you start learning a language, you do not have to focus on memorizing anything, you have to focus on understanding. So a lot of people, for example, go like, hey, I really want to remember all the words. They panic because they learn a word, they read the word, they forget. The whole thing, the whole aim is to understand the language. So you use these bilingual texts, you analyze dialogue by dialogue. Every single day you do a new dialogue. Then you translate the text in, let's say, French, this French text, into your own native language. You write it, for example, on a Google Doc, or you write it...
You translate on your own.
Into your own native language. And someone might retort, why would you do that if you already have the text?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's translated for you.
It's because when you translate it, you make an effort. We learn through struggle. This is a very important thing. People don't like struggling. People want it easy, but we learn through struggle. We understand through struggle.
You have to suffer.
I wouldn't call it suffering because when you enjoy something, when it's rewarding, then you enjoy it. You know, it's like solving a mathematical problem. One day, I understood this very clearly when one day my father, who was a mathematician, told me something that really struck me. I had just flunked an exam, general physics, Fisica Generale, when I was doing university. And I remember that I came down and I went back home. I was despondent. I was frustrated. I was discouraged. I thought I'm never going to pass this exam. And my father looked at me and said, look, you have to use your head in order to understand the problem. Not try to memorize anything, just try to solve a problem. By solving problems, you understand it. Maybe you're going to fail, but your understanding is going to go up a notch. So I went back and completely changed my approach. And instead of just doing mechanically all these exercises, which was not leading to understanding, but just to the illusion that I was doing my work, then I just went back. I did fewer exercises, but I was racking my brains to understand the problem. Language learning is just solving this. It's the same thing. Instead of solving a mathematical problem, you're solving a linguistic problem. You have to dissect the text in order to understand it. Just understand it. You don't even need to memorize it, okay? Okay. So you translate the text into Italian. Why do you do that? Because that allows you to understand the text in French. You cannot translate something you do not understand. You create your own translation, right? Oh. And then a couple of days later, you can translate it back into French. Why do you do that? Because by doing that, you start thinking directly in the target language. Somebody might retort, no, you don't have to use translation because translation will cause you to think in your native language and then to filter everything. If you do it wrong, yes, but if you do it right, translation is just a tool in order to not only understand not only translate, but also understand how the language works. Why? Well, you translate back, then you can take a look at your own translation and the the official translation.
The original text.
And you can learn. You're testing yourself. You know, testing is one of the most powerful things if done well. So now I'm not going to go into the details of how this works because it's going to look a little bit complicated, but the system works in the following way. Every day you analyze a new dialogue, and then during the same day you go back to the previous dialogues and you do certain things that allow you to, let's say, understand it fully. Okay. If people are interested, they can take a look.
Yeah, sure. We're gonna. Luca has a special course dedicated only for this. We're gonna put in the description the links if you want to further explore this. So if I understood correctly, so first you read it through, the very first time you come across the text in both languages, and then you take the original text in the language which you are. You're learning target language, and then you translate to your native language on your own, and you sit it there for a couple of days, come back to the text, and then you take the translation you did, and from this you go back to you do another translation, second one, to the original text, to your language you're learning, and you compare with the original text.
Yes.
There's like 3 steps. If I were to
3 steps, there are some other intermediary steps in between, but yes, fundamentally it looks like this. It works like this. And the last thing I wanted to say is that you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. You just have to do it for 3 months. It's very intensive, more or less. It takes an hour a day. You have to rack your brains. You have to use your I wouldn't go so far as to say your willpower, but you have to rack your brains. You have to use your mental energy because you're struggling and you're learning. If you don't struggle, you don't learn. You do it for 3 months, you get a very solid understanding of the language because compared to just reading the text. When you use a manual language learning material, it's a tool. You don't just read it. It's not a book that you read. It's a tool that you use in order to craft, to get a solid grasp of your target language. And that is the base of everything else. Then the real fun starts later.
Okay. So you acquire the skill and then it helps you to apply to different languages and so on. Okay. What are the key habits of a successful language learner? And is it about atomic habits or is it something more to that?
Well, I would say that the most important habit is to learn to create systems that work for you. What do I mean by that? Well, I think that the single most powerful habit is simply to sit down and learn. Is it easy to do? No. Why is it not easy? Because most people misunderstand the concept of motivation. People tend to think, if I'm motivated, then I'm going to sit. Today I'm not motivated, I'm not going to sit. But actually, motivation does not lead to action, but action leads to motivation. Think about when you don't feel like doing something and then all of a sudden you sit down and you actually do it, and then an hour goes by and you tell yourself, wow, like at the beginning I was not feeling it and now I can't get enough of it and I want to continue. Why does that happen? Well, that happens because the starting point is the biggest point of friction. It's difficult to start something, but when you get into the groove of it, quote unquote, then everything gets easier, right? So how can you design your life? How can you design your routine so that you can sit down, you can overcome that moment of friction every day, you can sit down and make it happen? In my case, it's a number of factors. For example, I like learning first thing in the morning, right? I know that my energy is very high. I'm very fresh in the morning. Most people are like that, but not all people. Some people flourish and thrive at night. Well, I'm dead at night. I just want to go to bed and hit the sack. But knowing what your ideal time slot of the day is really important because you can design your routine according to that. For example, if, say, you've been working for 4 hours and you like working on your language at lunch, during lunch break at work, and if you have the time, then do that. If you like, waking up in the morning and hitting the books as soon as you wake up, do that. If you like working at night, do that. That's the first thing. So understanding what your ideal time slot is. The second thing is, as I was saying before, to design a system that allows you to sit down and start. And I use a concept in Tiny Habits and Atomic Habits, in particular Tiny Habits, which is another great book about habits, and it's anchoring. Anchoring means to anchor or link or connect a habit that you already have with another habit, which is the habit of language learning. Just an example. You wake up, you have breakfast, then you brush your teeth, right?
Yeah.
Having breakfast and brushing your teeth is normally two habits that most people have. Brush your teeth, guys. It's important for your health. So you can design a system, and you can, for example, write, after brushing my teeth, I will sit down and learn. And if you start doing that, it becomes a habit. The first 20 days, 30 days, 60 days, some people say 21, some people say 66 days, doesn't matter. The first time you do it, the first weeks, that's the most delicate part, because you have to get into the habit of it. Once you get into the habit of it, then you can tweak things. But if you get into the groove of it, if you get into the habit of it, then it becomes automatic. So if you know your time zone or your ideal time slot, and then you create this anchoring system, then you just start doing this every day. Then you have to design, of course, you have to think about, how long can I do this for? 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 45? What is my ideal time? When is my energy going to dwindle? When is my enthusiasm and energy going to taper off? And you can time your sessions. I have, if you see that the Pomodoro method, I have that. Well, people can't see it, but if you want,
we can grab it.
You can grab it. It's there. So, yeah. So you have this little thing here that you can use. This comes directly from the Pomodoro method. Some of you will know the technique. You can just set it up, and this allows you to understand how long it takes you to do certain things, how long it takes you to do a great learning session before your energy and your enthusiasm go down, etc., and then you can tweak on the go. So these three things aligned will help you design a system that allows you to learn every single day, and it's very powerful.
I think this can also be tied to the motivation of when you make in the new year, beginning of a new year, everybody says, oh, I'm going to learn this language in this year. But after a few months, you fade away because you think, oh, I have time still left. But if you have a system, for example, if you make short-term goal of about 3 months, you can evaluate quicker what you did, and you can improve upon what didn't go well. So it's basically about making a system.
That's an excellent point. And to your point, I would also say that people tend to think in terms of goals. That's why we have New Year's Eve resolutions, or we have my lofty goal about hitting the gym and losing weight, etc., etc. That's totally fine to have a goal. It gives you a direction. But the problem of goals, especially yearly goals, and this is what happens with a lot of people. They say, oh, within a year I will be doing this. Is that a year is a long time. Life gets in the way. A lot of things can happen. A 3-month period is much more manageable because it's not short enough that you get into panic mode, but it's not long enough that so many things happen that derail your plan. That's the first thing. And the second thing, and I think it's much more important, it's the concept of focusing on the process rather than the goals. We live in a goal-oriented society where we tend to think, oh, we have this goal and that goal and that goal. But I think that the problem of goals is that if you have a goal, let's say in 6 months, that you want to speak Greek fluently, then every day you set yourself up for a disillusionment and not despair, but despair maybe is a big word, because you haven't reached that goal yet. Well, if you focus on the process, things are different because you win every day. To give you a very clear example, let's suppose that you've been learning Greek for some time, or Swedish, that's your case, for some time.
I've been learning Swedish for about 2 years now, but more actively recently, yeah.
But let's suppose that you've been learning Swedish for 6 months, right? And then it's January 2025, and you tell yourself, in 6 months, I want to go to Sweden and I will be speaking fluently, or I want to reach basic a good conversational level. That's fine, but to me, it's much more powerful to ask yourself this pivotal question: what do I have to do every single day in order to reach this goal? Because you cannot control the goal, you cannot control the end result, but you can control the process. What do you do every single day? So if you ask yourself, for every goal that you have, if you ask yourself, what is it that I have to do every single day to reach that goal? That changes everything. What do I have to do to reach basic conversational fluency in Swedish? To have 15 minutes of conversation with an app. Like, for example, you've been using Langua, but it could be anything. To talk to your tutor, to use an app, to get into using the language and speaking the language, that is much more powerful. Do you want to understand better? You want to improve your listening comprehension? That's a very vague goal, but you can make it very concrete in terms of process, right? Once again, process-wise, if you tell yourself, what do I have to do to improve my listening comprehension? Listen to the language. Listen to a series of podcasts every single day for 15, 30, or 45 minutes. That's way more powerful.
Yeah, so guys, make a system that works for you, that could bring you to your goals. I think that's the takeaway here.
Yes. System, habits.
So let's talk about the input and the output. We get the input from listening and reading, and we output the language through writing and speaking. How much of a balance should there be in these activities?
That's an excellent question. I would say that, to me, the most single thing that you can do is to get input from the beginning and continue doing a lot of input over the course of the next years, because input is what moves the needle, so to speak. Input is what makes you acquire the language. But you might retort, well, I want to speak, so do I have to speak? Do I have to produce the language? Can I do something actively? Of course you can't. My simple rule, I'm not saying that you have to follow exactly this rule to the letter, but my simple rule is to have, let's say, if I have an hour a day, 80% of the time is dedicated to input, listening to podcasts, watching movies, watching videos on YouTube, and 10% to 15% is dedicated to using the language in an active way. It doesn't necessarily mean to speak, but it could be just write things like write sentences and read them out loud, or have a list of sentences that are meaningful for you and to connect them into a small short speech. Of course, talk to myself, speak to myself is very good. Speaking to this app that I've been using is very powerful too, but I tend to use it 10% of my time. Why do you do that? Well, it's because your time is limited. You have maybe an hour a day. Not a lot of people have the privilege and the luxury of, dedicating 1 hour a day to their target language. So if your time is limited, you have to use it well. This is the reason why, if you have an hour and you tell yourself, okay, I want to follow Luca's suggestion, I want to dedicate 80% of my time to input, then what you can do is, okay, an hour, 45 minutes, I'm going to listen to a podcast, or I'm going to listen to a podcast and watch a video. And then for 10 minutes at the end of it, or 15 minutes, I can just have a conversation with myself, or I can talk to ChatGPT or AI or Lengua, whatever, or I can do something active.
Or write a summary of what you heard.
Write a summary of what you heard. Just activate the language. So this has been my rule, and it's been working wonders. But once again, everybody is different. You want to do just input during weekdays when you're tired and you have to work? Fine. Do you want to dedicate your weekend to speaking, to activating the language? That's also fine. You can just tweak things around. Flexibility is very important. You have to do what works for you. As long as you stick to abide by this law of input is the most important thing, and output is the cherry on top, as they say.
Okay. Yeah. So Luca's suggestion would be 80% input, and the rest would be the output.
Yes.
And but more input. In any case, you will recommend more input before,
especially at the beginning. During the intermediate stage, still input a lot, and then when you get to an advanced stage, then you can do whatever you want. But yes, fundamentally, input is what moves the needle. Input is what causes you to acquire, internalize the language to make it yours, and output is a way of unleashing the power, the language power in you, so to speak.
Okay, flashcards. So I know it works for some people. What's your take on flashcards?
Do I have to give you the diplomatic answer, or do you have to?
You can give the answer you want.
Okay. I think that flashcards can be a good tool if you find it rewarding, if you like it. A lot of people swear by it. A lot of people like it. They say they learn a language by using them. So if you like them, by all means do that. Use them, because I think it's one of the tools that you can use. One of the tools of your arsenal that you can use in order to learn a language. Personally, I've never used them. I've never felt the use.
You never use flashcards?
I've never used flashcards. I use the bidirectional translation system to understand, to get a very good grasp of the language. And then what I do mainly is listening to podcasts and watching videos in a very active way. Taking notes, re-listening, trying different steps, going through the same podcast from different angles, so to speak. But I don't make lists. I don't compile lists of words. I never try to memorize words. I know this sounds ridiculous, because people tend to think, how do you memorize if you don't make an effort to memorize? That's what I said before. If you expose yourself to the language long enough, and you expose yourself to content that is enjoyable, that is rich in words that you don't know, for example, 20% of the words in a text you don't know, or 10%, it means that you're moving the needle because you are being exposed to content you do not know.
And you can acquire these new words.
You acquire them, and why do you acquire them? Let me go back to what I was saying before. How do you acquire words without memorizing them? It all boils down to one thing. It's called acquisition. At the beginning of learning a language, at the beginning stages of learning a language, you do not have the infrastructure in your head in order to memorize. That is the reason why people tend to, not everybody, but a lot of students tend to make the mistake of trying to memorize words when they do not have any infrastructure in their head. To give you a metaphor, maybe it's more, you can visualize it. Imagine that you have a spider web. You have this room, there's a spider web. If the spider web has a lot of spaces, right? So it's not very thick, then words, flies, just fly around and they don't get stuck in the spider web. But the more you expose yourself to the language, the thicker the spider web becomes, and the words just get stuck in the spider web without you making an effort. So at the beginning stages, I mainly focus on trying to understand the language, not trying to memorize. But the more you expose yourself to the language, the bigger this language infrastructure grows in your head, and then words get stuck in the net, so to speak, automatically, because your brain identifies and already identifies, for example, certain parts of words, some root. Oh, this word is unknown, but I understand it from context, and also contains some other smaller words that I already know. So it becomes much easier to memorize things without doing anything when it comes to...
You're figuring out stuff.
Yes, and you do it holistically. Holistically means that you get exposed to content, and your brain picks up information always from context. While with flashcards, what happens normally is that a lot of time you tend to learn words from out of context.
It's just like a list of words, basically.
Not necessarily, because you can build flashcards, for example, by using sentences. You can take a text, you can extract pieces of information. But the problem with that, especially at the beginning, is that you do not have that infrastructure. I would use flashcards, for example, at a more advanced stage, intermediate stage. I think that could be useful. But I would always do it in conjunction with podcasts or videos. So I watch a video, I extract some words or pieces of language that I like, phrases, collocations and whatnot, and then I can form a story with that, or I can create a summary. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't need, I've never used flashcards. I'm not saying that you do not have to use it. I'm just saying that if you use it the wrong way, in the wrong context, and at the wrong stage, then you run the risk of slowing down your progress, and sometimes it can even stifle your progress, because you think, oh, I'm doing all this work, so I'm making progress. Well, you're not making progress because you're focusing more on learning a language deliberately rather than acquiring. Acquiring is the base. Deliberate learning is good if it happens together with acquisition. That happens when you consume content in the language, massive content over a long period of time.
Yeah, so be an active spider and Vimeo web, so you'll get the word stuck.
Spider web, yes. Build your spider web.
Your spider. So for the next question, I think you already built the base. We have to go back to Paris, where you were. You had just moved in, but you enroll yourself to become an interpreter. And a year into studies of interpretation, you drop out. Why did you drop out? And was it by any special circumstance, or?
When I was attending the ISIT, the Conference Interpreting School, I had been working as a coach for a year. When I dropped out of school, I just realized that was not my path. I still remember the words of my teacher said, Luca, sei sprecato per fare l'interprete. Sei sprecato per fare l'interprete means that basically that was her nice way of telling me, you can do better with other languages, meaning as an interpreter, you're going to focus just on 2 or 3 languages, but you really like exploring as many languages as possible. If you want to become a professional interpreter, especially within the European institutions, you have to know these languages really well. And by really well, it means that you have to constantly train as an interpreter. You have to constantly read newspapers, what happens. You have to be very familiar with acronyms that are just used within certain contexts. You have to really dig deep into these languages. And this goes to the detriment, unfortunately, to the detriment of learning more, exploring more languages. You have to make a choice. Do I go very deep into 1, 2, 3, 4 languages, or do I want to explore.
You are going like a deep rabbit holes, like few of them, and
Exactly.
okay.
And I remember, I remember one day my Italian teacher at the time, and by Italian teacher I mean that she was not teaching us Italian. She was an Italian interpreter, was training us to translate, on the fly or interpret on the fly speeches in German. In particular, this teacher, French into Italian, she noticed that I had brought my Japanese book at school, and she got mad, and she said, "You're never going to become an interpreter if you're learning Japanese, where you have to focus on the few languages you really have to focus on." So I just understood that was not my path, and I was very glad that I made that decision of dropping out of school and pursuing another career.
Yeah. So does dating help you dating help you learn a language, or
I don't know where
do
you
you
want to go with this.
do languages help get dates?
So you're asking me, do I pick up girls to learn and improve my languages, or do girls help me improve languages?
You can pick up the question as you want.
I think it works in both directions. I think that knowing a language helps you get to know girls, get into romantic relationships, and romantic relationships will help improve your languages. I can give you a couple of examples. When I got to know my my Polish ex-girlfriend, I sat down. It was a date in Krakow. I was very nervous because I had a B1 level, B1-ish level. Let's put it this way, and my Polish skills were not good enough for me to hold an entire conversation for 9 hours. That is exactly what happened, right? For 9 hours, I had to make do, as they say, and I had to speak Polish. And I remember that when I sat down, I said, "Hey, let's speak English. It's easy. It's the easiest way, right?" But she would not have it, and she did not want to speak English because she herself felt very nervous about using English. She did not feel confident.
Okay.
So that forced me to speak Polish. Now, why am I telling you all this? It's because that was a pivotal moment in our relationship, because once a relationship starts in a language, and normally if it starts in English, which is normally the vernacular language that we tend to use to
like a bridge language when you
bridge language, exactly. Then the relationship will be built upon English, and then you will not improve your target language, even if you have a girlfriend that speaks that language. So I think that there's always value in learning languages, because a language open a lot of doors, a lot of possibilities. So the fact that I have been learning all these languages and I get to a level where I can communicate really helped finding girlfriends and getting into romantic relationships. And then I made sure that I was using the language with her, because she not because I imposed that, not because I wanted to use girlfriends to learn languages, but just because it naturally happened. I already had,
This is a consequence of the learning process, I guess.
Yes, but I know a lot of couples that in which the bridge language or communication language is always English, because one did not speak the language well enough or did not want to learn it.
Because you're having very complicated discussions, and because it's very intimate, so you have to make sure both people understand what's meant.
For sure. But I think that on the one hand, the fact that you already know a language, you already taken the time and the energy to reach a level where you can communicate is really important. Is your own effort, is your own merit. But then, of course, when you get into a relationship and you get to use the language every day, it skyrockets your language skills, because you get to use the language, you get to, live the language in every situation. You get to know the parents, you get to know the friends, you go to the country, you spend more time with native speakers. It changes everything. This happened in a number of languages, and there's a before and there's an after always. When I got into a relationship, then I could use the language every day for meaningful purposes. And that, of course, has been the catalyst for huge language improvement across a few languages.
And any advice for any people who are couples that have different languages but communicate in English, and they want to switch to the other language, but they find it hard to switch or to learn it? What would you suggest?
My simple advice is, and this is general relationship advice, is to get very clear about what you want and communicate well. So there are some unwritten rules or things that nobody talks about the elephant in the room, but if one, for example, says, I really want to learn, say, Russian. I'm with a Russian girl, and my Russian girl is not that happy for me to speak Russian because she doesn't have any patience. So you just clearly tell her, look, could we just start speaking for 5 minutes a day? I really want to learn Russian. So you make it clear that you want to learn her language.
Just 5 minutes?
You can start with 5 minutes a day, and then you can move on to 10, 15, 20. Because if you start from nothing, just to speak from speaking English to suddenly speaking her language, it's gonna sound and look weird to her. Because both of you got into this dynamic where you use just one language, English.
Yeah, I think a lot of people I know are like some of my friends, even like they have their own native languages, but they communicate in English.
Yeah, and of course.
So I think it's a very common situation for many people.
It's a very common situation. So I would say be very clear upfront about the fact that you want to improve or you want to learn your partner's language, and then just start, slowly, incrementally, maybe a very short conversation at breakfast, and you just jot down some words, and then from there, you start improving. And of course, in parallel, you can also listen to podcasts and watch videos, because remember, it's not just speaking, it's mostly about input. So you have to put in the work yourself, and then you can surprise your partner one day by speaking fluently because you're putting in so much work. Then you start talking to them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and sooner rather than later, you're going to be speaking the language of your partner.
And you're going to surprise partners, family and friends when you're going to eventually meet them.
Yeah, it comes with a bonus. Then all of a sudden, ta-da, I speak the language fluently. People are going to go like, wow.
How did you do that?
Yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah, so next question is about 3 languages that you mentioned that you struggle with in your YouTube videos: Japanese, Serbian, and Romanian. So Japanese we talked about already. So if you would reflect back, what did not work for these 2 languages, Romanian and Serbian? What was the thing that made you struggle?
I would also include Danish.
Danish also? Okay.
I would say Romanian because I did not have any friends. I did not have any ties to the culture. I hadn't gotten interested in the culture, and that made a difference. That is not, going back to what I was saying before, not having a motive, not having a real compelling reason why to learn the language. Danish, I would say, because I got to know a Danish girl and I learned it just because of her. But when the relationship ended, I just lost the motivation because the reason why I was learning it just faded away, right? Okay. So, and then I already knew Swedish, and I had other priorities. I was learning other languages and I had to make a choice. And as far as Serbian is concerned, I haven't dropped Serbian, but I just decided to put it on a pause. I've been learning it for 2 years, but this year in particular, I told myself, your time is limited, your energy is limited, you got a lot of stuff to do, you got a lot of fish to fry, you have to make a decision. So I decided to go all in when it comes to Turkish, learning Turkish every day, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, and then on and off twice a week learning Hungarian, because already learning 2 languages at the same time actively is a lot of work. So there's a lot of factors,
okay,
and it depends on the language.
So could you just walk us through your morning routine, daily routine actually? What time do you wake up and how does your day unfold?
So I normally wake up at 5:30 or 6, depending on the day, depending on when I go to bed. Then I make my bed and smile. Very important to make your bed because it gives you a structure. There's even a book that is called Make Your Bed by a general. It talks to you about, it helps you build discipline through the day. Oh, check. I've done the first thing.
You achieved something.
I've achieved
first
something.
Achievement. Okay.
2 minutes. And then I have breakfast. And then I sit down, I journal for 45 minutes. So I write about my life, what happened the previous day. I have like these 10 categories of my life. It helps me. It's some sort of meditation, That's the first form of meditation. I pour into the Google Doc all the thoughts that I have. When you first wake up in the morning, you have a whirlwind of thoughts. So I put them on paper first, just jot down a few key things, and then I write on my Google Doc. And then I meditate for 30 minutes. I have 3 meditation sessions, 3 different meditation sessions. And then I basically start learning Turkish. So I do Turkish for 45 minutes, and then I start working. So I have my deep work, 4 hours, deep work, creative thinking, planning, working on my business instead of in my business. The difference is very important because working on your business is about strategy. Working in your business is about the tactical stuff, the operational stuff, when I have to upload a YouTube video or I have to write to colleagues, etc. And then after that, I have lunch. Then I have my reading session. I introduced recently a reading session also in the morning after meditation, and in between meditation and Turkish, of 10-15 minutes of reading a book for growth, whether it's business, personal growth, etc. I have my second reading session after lunch. Then I have siesta. In Italy, we make siesta is really important because I wake up very early, so 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I do the operational work. Operational is, getting into emails, and because I try not to look at emails in the morning because it creates a lot of confusion. Emails and social media, I do that in the evening.
Of distraction. No?
Yeah, so I try to turn off my phone for the good part of the first part of the day. And then I possibly, if I'm not tired, I do some Hungarian or some Greek. I listen to something to relax for 30 minutes. Normally I watch YouTube videos because I got to the stage where I can just watch videos and enjoy the language while learning still a couple of words here and there. And then I have dinner. And then I either watch something on Netflix or on YouTube, and then I read for 30 minutes or 45 minutes before going to bed.
Okay, that's it. So it is repetitive all 5 days of the week, and in the weekends you have some more like freedom.
Rinse and repeat. I also do it on weekends. I've noticed that I'm going out less, especially when I'm in Rome, because I've noticed that if I stabilize my sleeping patterns, that helps me a lot. What happens in Western society, I think all across the globe, is that people tend to go out, which is their choice.
Humans are social beings.
Well, you have to socialize, and when they go out, the problem is that when I go out, I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about other people. Normally, what happens, or what happened before, is that you go out with your friends, you meet at 9:30 or 10, and then you get back at 2. You get a couple of drinks. I don't drink anymore, but back in the day, you get a couple of drinks, maybe a few drinks.
You're talking about alcoholic drinks.
Alcoholic drinks,
okay.
Yes. And then your sleeping patterns are completely messed up, and it takes days. There's a famous book which is called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker that talks about this, and it completely disrupts the sleeping patterns. Sleep is not something that you can catch up with, meaning, I slept for three hours tonight, Saturday night I had a lot of fun, and then on Sunday I'm going to sleep for 11 hours. It doesn't work that way. So it's a sacrifice, meaning that when I'm in Rome, especially for the first part of the year, I tend to stay at home a lot. So I socialize with my friends, we go out on and off, but I try to stay at home as much as possible because that is very good for my health. I'm 44 as of now, at the time we're speaking, and I can see that health is taking priority. Maybe at 20 you don't care. At 30 still fine, but at 45 you tend to feel the consequences of your actions over decades. So it's a choice I make in order to be a better person, be healthier, learn languages, learn stuff, because at the end of the day, for me, the real fun is when I learn. Of course, you have to socialize, but I do it sparingly. Twice a month, I go to a language exchange. I go back at 11 and I try to stabilize patterns. When someone asks, when someone is thinking, how can I fix my life? I think the very first thing to do is to stabilize your sleeping patterns. It all starts from sleep, and then once you stabilize sleep, then you can stabilize and you can improve your eating patterns. If you don't sleep enough, you got a hormone which is called ghrelin, and you're much hungrier. So you don't sleep enough, you're sleep deprived, you are maybe overweight, you don't have any energy during the day. It all aligns, It's a vicious circle. Well, you can reverse that by taking care of the most important things and aligning the most important things that matter.
You prioritize your health, and especially, I think it's interesting that you reveal your lifestyle to your people who know you, and especially your fans. So it's something that you can think about. Just now we are talking a bit apart. I mean, we are going a bit off topic, the language, and talking about lifestyle and what you are doing. Especially the choice of avoiding alcohol you made is interesting because it's also nuisance to your health, your liver.
Yes, but I don't think we're going off topic because everything is connected. We tend to think the language learning is disconnected with health, but actually health is the very first thing. But if you're healthy, you have more energy. If you have more energy and you're not depressed, and your mind doesn't go places, is not all over the place, then you know what your priorities are. So everything aligns. When someone tells me, how can I improve my language learning? Actually, the very first thing I tell them when I do my coaching lessons is, how's your life in general? Because if your life is messed up, your language learning is going to be messed up as well. I read something that really struck me. I've been working as an entrepreneur for 4 years now. And that quote or that line was, if you want to fix your business, you have to fix yourself first. So if you want to fix your language learning, fix yourself first. Go back to the basics: sleep, nutrition, hydration, and everything is going to fall into place. You fix one thing, it's a good domino effect, and then all the other parts of your life are going to benefit from that one decision.
Yeah, I think so. I can completely agree with that. It's something
you concur.
I concur. It's something people take for granted, your health, and if you're in trouble, you can't have time to learn your languages. And
of course.
So that's I think you should prioritize the
mind and
health.
body.
Mind and body. Everything's connected. So, who's your favorite polyglot of all time, Luca?
Well, I'd say Katolomb or Lomb Kato. Katolomb is a Hungarian polyglot, and I really like her because she is evidence of the fact that the human spirit can overcome anything. She recounts in her book, How I Learn Languages, which is a wonderful book, and you can find it online, easily find it online, that when she was learning Russian in Budapest in 1945, and the Russians arrived, and there was this siege of the city because the Russians were attacking, the Nazis who were still occupying Budapest. The city was being bombed, and she kept learning Russian even if, well, when bombs were falling around all around her. We live in a world where we have food, where we have shelter, where we have security, safety, etc., etc. And she was learning Russian, one of the many languages she learned, even when the city was being bombed, even under threat. Like she was basically in jeopardy. She did not even know she would make it to see the next day, to see the light of day, as they say. So that was really inspiring for me. I really like the book. I really like the other one very important quote, that is, you do not learn grammar. No, you don't learn language from grammar, but grammar from language. This is a wonderful quote, just a few words that encompass everything that is good about people who really understand, who really get it, who really understand what language learning is all about. Meaning that you learn the grammar as a consequence of getting exposed to the language. Something that looks odd to the people who got exposed to, and everybody gets exposed to the school system, where we tend to get the opposite. We tend to think that we have to learn the grammar.
It's something like apart from the language. That's how you they teach it to you in the school. I don't know why.
Yeah, they teach it to you, so it gets into your, which is called the implicit part of your memory, implicit memory, and you tend to take it for granted. You tend to think, oh, the very first thing I have to do is to learn grammar. How can you learn a language without learning grammar? It's so ingrained in our brains, in our education, that it's difficult to untie the knot, this Gordian knot that is formed in our head. So that was a wonderful quote, as well as many other things that she wrote in the book. So that's the one reason why I think she's my prominent figure when it comes to polyglotry, lifestyle, mindset, and everything in between.
Okay. And everybody in the language journey reaches a plateau phase. So you are making a lot of work, but sometimes you feel stuck and you do not see the results immediately. Mm-hmm. So it's more or less in the B1 or B2 level before you get exposed to C1, I think. And how do you deal with this plateau, this break?
Well, how can I reply with a few simple terms? It's not going to be easy, but we're going to try my best. In skill acquisition, when you acquire any skill, you have a law that is called the law of diminishing returns. This means, for example, that at the beginning you can learn very fast, and then you can put a certain amount of effort and you get certain results. But then the more you move into the higher stages, the upper echelons of language learning, what happens is that you put in the effort, but then you get diminishing results. So for the same amount of effort that you put before, the result is lower. And it comes to a point where you're putting a lot of effort and maybe you gain 2 inches, right? This is, for example, Olympic athletes, top level athletes, they compete for centimeters. They compete for the little, they work on the little details that make a difference. And in language learning, what normally happens is that at the beginning, everything seems fine in the sense that you're getting exposed to the language, you're learning words, but then at a certain point, that there comes a point where you keep learning, but you don't feel like you're improving. That is the diminishing returns. It's a completely natural thing to do, to happen. So what do you do, right? What's the solution?
Yeah.
The solution is to keep tweaking things so that you keep yourself engaged and you keep working and operating within the so-called Goldilocks zone. Now you're an astronomer, so you know what the Goldilocks zone in astronomy is. It's that let's say place or a zone where a planet is not getting exposed to the heat of the star too much, but if the planet is too close to the star, it melts, it's too hot. If the planet is too far, it gets really cold. And in language learning, this is called Goldilocks zone, or I think the technical term is the zone of proximal development, or something along those lines. And that is the zone where something is neither too easy nor too difficult, but it's just challenging enough so that you do not get discouraged and you get excited because you learned new things. To give you a very clear idea of this, just to give an example, let's suppose that you're an intermediate learner and you've been learning, say, Spanish for quite some time. You understand podcasts, you understand videos, more or less, maybe 80%, but you want to improve and you feel like you're stuck when it comes to vocabulary. You always use the same terms, the same words, you get exposed to the same stuff, and you feel like you're not improving vocabulary-wise. Let's talk about a specific aspect of language learning. What can you do in order to keep improving, to keep learning new vocabulary? Well, you can, for example, grab a book. Now, the problem with that is that a book can feel very difficult because you open a book, maybe it's a technical book or it's even a novel, and all of a sudden for every page you find 15 expressions that you do not know. You get discouraged because that's too difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you can scale back and maybe find a book that you already read in your own native language that really helps understand the book better, because once you understand the plot and you know the book, you know that you like the book, you already read it, you're familiar with the content, the book feels a little bit easier. You can use a tool like, for example, Google Lens to scan the pages so that you can understand immediately. You can even play the audio in your own native language or reading in the target language. So you create the tools and the circumstances to do something that is slightly challenging and that allows you to learn to fill in the gaps that you have, vocabulary, grammar, etc., etc. I've given you just one example. So in a nutshell, you can design a strategy where you, for example, you want to improve certain aspects of your language learning. You want to improve your vocabulary, you can do this. You want to improve your speaking skills, you can get into a conversation with a tutor. Does it feel scary? Okay, I get a very nice tutor, very friendly, and I prepare the speech beforehand with words that I want to use during the conversation. That makes it easier. Still difficult, still challenging, but easier, not discouraging. So you design things depending on your circumstance, your level, your taste of what you want to do and what you want to focus on, and you implement this step by step. This Kaizen philosophy of improving 1% every time, and then slowly you will get better and better until you reach a level where something is going to click. I call it the eureka moment of language learning, where you reach B2, the language is yours, and then you've reached the peak of the hill or the mountain, and then the rest, the slope ahead, is easier because you're going down, you're still enjoying the language, but now it's easier. You can just consume content and keep learning.
So the key would be to do a small progressive improvements, and in the end, like, you would overcome the plateau and reach the summit.
By staying within the Goldilocks zone,
yeah,
and by doing deliberate practice. Deliberate practice means to deliberately, purposefully sit down and actively learn in a way that engages you and challenges you, so that small challenges, so that you can keep improving.
Yeah. What separates you from many polyglots is your fluency. You are fluent in many of the languages you studied. So how do you keep your fluency, and how do you maintain the fluency once you reach? Okay, some people reach the fluency, but after several years they sort of fall back, or how do you keep your fluency?
So, first of all, I would say that there's a difference between understanding, comprehension, and the speech and the speaking skills. So, when it comes to understanding a language, once you understand it really well, it never goes away. You can even, not being exposed to that language for years, you still understand it. Well, unfortunately, your speaking skills degrade very fast if you don't use it. If you don't use it, you just lose it, as they say, right? So, in order to counteract this phenomenon, this natural phenomenon, what I normally do is that I tend to create the circumstances where I can get to use the language in a natural environment. So, for example, let's say, apart from exposing myself to the language, like watching the news, watching documentaries in multiple languages, reading newspapers, reading books, which is the base again for acquisition, then I tend to have a lot of friends. And when we go out, we can speak Spanish, we can speak French, German. At home we can speak Swedish or Greek. So I designed my life and I made choices so that I can use some language at home. I can use multiple languages at work, and I can use multiple languages in what I call the macro environment, meaning going out with friends. A lot of my friends here in Rome, and on top of that, of course, ça va sans dire, we have the internet. So sending voice messages, in Spanish and Swedish and in multiple languages on a daily basis or on a weekly basis to a lot of friends I have around the world. That allows me to use at least, let's say, 6 to 8 languages on a weekly basis. But of course, there are some other languages I don't get to use very often, and that is just natural. So let's say that 8 languages, I get to use them more or less on a weekly basis.
Okay, so you build your life, you create the life around the languages so you can get to use them, so that you are exposed and constantly engaged with the language.
Yes, let's put it that way.
So next question is something that we cannot avoid nowadays, the use of technology and the AI that's omnipresent. And what do you think about this abundance of AI and new technologies to learn languages? And would you think, as a result, in about 20 years, would people even care to learn a new language?
So these are 2 separate questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, I think that language learning is already benefiting from this technology, artificial intelligence technology, because it facilitates understanding. Let me give you a very clear example of that. Very recent example is that my Turkish. If I had learned Turkish, say 5 years ago, just maybe 3 years ago, before ChatGPT happened, right? It would have been difficult for me to do this work that I'm doing right now when it comes to, for example, dissecting texts for podcasts. Now, at the beginning, I used Asimil, and as I said before at the beginning of the interview, Asimil has bilingual transcriptions, has grammar notes that explain. This is particularly important for Turkish because it's so different, the structure, the language, the vocabulary, and whatnot. But then when you venture into unknown ground, the ground of real learning, that is when you consume podcasts and you consume videos, even if you have bilingual transcripts, it's really difficult to understand, just especially at the beginning after you've just finished Asimil and you're kind of have an A2, let's say, if you have a high beginner level, it's difficult even with bilingual texts. And ChatGPT helps you dissect every sentence if you want. You just feed it to ChatGPT and you tell it, ChatGPT, please explain this sentence, break it down, explain the grammar. That improved my learning tenfold because it made it really easy for me to understand Turkish immediately. It's like having a tutor who takes a text and explains that to you step by step, right? So just an example of that. Then you can talk to AI. Now we have ChatGPT, you have the advanced version of ChatGPT, you can talk to it, you can talk to it in any language, you can ask it to correct you. And then you have certain apps, in particular one that I've been using, we talked about this before because we're both using it, which is called Langua. And it really made a difference because you can talk to them, you can talk to AI, you can like do anything. Like for example, I want to train as a pilot. Let's talk about flying. Let's talk about flying mechanics. Let's talk about engineering. I'm a wizard and you're my apprentice, or I'm an apprentice, you're my wizard. Let's talk about making potions. It's just mind-blowing what you can do. So you have, on the one hand, you have AI, which is kind of a tutor that explains things to you, makes it really easy to understand, especially when it's difficult to understand. And on the other hand, you have AI that allows you to translate texts, and also you can talk to it. And you have a tutor 24/7 who's very patient, who's always there. You can talk to it every time.
Who doesn't get tired?
Doesn't get tired and provides fantastic feedback that you can use in order to keep improving what I was saying before, the so-called intermediate phase or intermediate block or intermediate plateau, whatever you want to call it. And this is what I'm doing for Greek. I want to reach C1 right now, and I want to become eloquent. I am fluent, not still eloquent. AI is telling me how to rephrase my sentences in order to express myself more eloquently. That is really difficult to get, even with a tutor, because the tutor has to be trained, has to be patient, has to be friendly, has to be willing to provide detailed explanations, and that doesn't happen very often.
And it's also hard to find tutors for some rare languages if you were to learn.
Difficult to find, and most of all, the AI tutor is knowledgeable, knows about everything. So that is a revolution for those who want to embrace it, and I think it's changing language learning forever. Now, as to your second question, whether it's still worth learning languages, I think it will always be worth learning languages, because the effort and the struggle that you make in order to learn allows for your brain to improve, right? There's according to some research, for example, Alzheimer's disease gets people who speak multiple languages get Alzheimer's. If they unfortunately get Alzheimer's disease, they get it later, because the brain hugely benefits from language learning. So there's always merit in speaking multiple languages, in learning multiple languages. We can talk to people directly. And when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, you just need to learn English to get by in this world," I'm just replied, "I don't know what they're missing out."
Okay. And how about any online tools that you use that you think are underrated in the language learning community?
I would say underrated. I'm not sure. I can tell you that some tools, on the other hand, that they get a lot of they are very popular, but I don't think they're very useful. Like Duolingo, for example, is a tool that I will not use to learn languages, because it gets you hooked. It's got this gamification thing that gets you hooked, but they want as a company, they want your time, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that they really want you to learn a language. And if you complete a streak, and it's a very long streak of whatever you have to do, I'm not sure that is a very acquisition-rich environment. As for tools that are underrated, I'm not sure. I think that, again, I can tell you about the things that I would do, and I actually do, and I would recommend, is to use ChatGPT and you use Langua for understanding texts and speaking to get feedback, to get into deliberate, useful conversations.
Do you recommend also having subtitles, two subtitles in your native language and the original language at the same time? In which videos?
This is a very interesting question. My answer is it depends.
Okay.
It depends. When you watch, for example, a movie, it really depends on your level. In my experience, sometimes, strangely, oddly enough, it's better to have subtitles just in Italian, my own native language, because I got to a point where I don't know that many words in that language, and Italian allows me to fill in the gaps. An example of that is Greek. Now I'm watching a TV series, which I love, and for me, it's better to have subtitles in Italian rather than in Greek, because there's a lot of technical words. I understand Greek enough so that through context, through the audio, and through the subtitles in Italian, I can infer the meaning, right? Okay. I can understand immediately. When you reach a B2 plus level, I think that you can have just the subtitles in your target language. And when it comes to having double subtitles, I find them very useful when I watch YouTube videos. For example, Polish, now I have a B2 plus level, maybe a little bit higher. And I find it great because I can just watch the content again that contains a lot of technical words or words I don't know. And sometimes I just either put pause or just look at the subtitles in Italian, and they fill in the gaps. An example of that, Makłowicz is this like guy who travels around the world. He's Polish. He speaks Polish, very elegant Polish. He uses a lot of words that relate to cooking because he shows himself cooking or talking about history, right? And having subtitles in Polish and in Italian is fantastic. I recommend it if you like it. I like it. I'm fast at reading both subtitles, but it's tiring to the eye.
Okay.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah, you have to read a lot. I mean, you I mean, you have to put a lot of energy to use it.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's not easy. You have to get used to it. So at the beginning, it can be completely overwhelming. So I think, again, it depends on your level. It depends on whether you like reading in English or whatever, in target language,
Okay.
native language. You should experiment and see what works and what doesn't.
So it depends. Okay. So if somebody happens to like join this video just by chance, like for the first time, and if you want to learn a new language for anybody, what is the key advice you have to give you for somebody who's just starting their first foreign language journey?
I would say get language learning material you like. For example, Asimo is one example, but I think you should get language learning material that contains dialogues, simple dialogues in the language. Forget about grammar books. Make sure that language learning material contains not only dialogues, but very lean, simple explanations of the grammar points that you will encounter in the dialogues. Make sure that you learn every day by following the rules there of the organization rules. And then know your why. Maybe that's the first one. You know your why you're learning a language is really important. Jot down your vision. How are you gonna use the language? With whom? In which circumstances? 2 years down the line. Make sure that you get language learning material to start with that is not grammar books, but it's dialogues in a simple language, and make sure you learn every day. These are the 3 things, if you align them, mindset, strategies, and organization, that will allow you to learn language no matter what happens. Of course, it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna take time. You're gonna find some obstacles along the way. It's only natural. There's a beautiful book which is called The Obstacle is the Way. So if you know why you're learning and you learn and you readjust and you find the method that works for you, you're going to be successful in learning a language.
Yeah, and we're coming to the last part of this very long interview. So in 2021, 4 years ago, you founded the Smart Language Learning Academy. And I think it's helping a lot of people, language learners, improve their language and learn new languages. What future plans do you have for the academy?
Well, my plan is to expand it into an academy that not only offers courses, now we're offering more and more services. We have tutors and teachers and coaches that allow for people not only, again, to take the courses, but also to work directly one-on-one with me and other teachers. And I also see the academy growing in the sense that we want to build an academy where we also want to teach languages in a very non-traditional way. So people will come to us and they will learn their favorite subject through the language, basically like going to university, but learning directly in the language. If you think about it, how is it that we've learned our own native language? We've learned our own native language by through contact with our peers, with our family, but also when we go to school and we reach the upper echelons of language learning, we have learned chemistry, mathematics, physics through the language. So we want to kind of offer this perspective of offering things that are valuable, for example, valuable in the 21st century, like how to meditate, emotional intelligence, business management, or if it's not business management, financial management. People don't know how to manage your finances. Stuff that is really useful in the languages. So you get the best of both worlds. You kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. I see the future of the academy going in that direction, and much more. But we're already taking steps in that direction. We have hundreds and hundreds of students who are happy, and I'm happy. I'm happy. I feel privileged to be able to do that.
All the best with these goals.
Thank you.
And we are coming to the last question. This is more about life advice. If you were to give any advice to your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
When it comes to language learning or life in general?
Life in general. Could be language as well. Up to you.
Well, first of all, I would say to treat your mind and body with attention. That is the first thing that I would say. Not that I've lived a life of rock and roll, drugs and whatnot, but I think if I could back, I would do a few things differently. First of all, I would care about my mind much more and my body. That's the first thing that I would do. And when it comes to language learning, I think everything is perfect and everything happens for a reason. So I think my language path has happened the way it has, unfolded the way it has unfolded for a reason. So I don't regret anything when it comes to language learning, and I don't regret anything when it comes in general, when it comes to life in general. The only thing, again, my piece of advice for myself and also for the people who are listening to us, especially if you're in your 20s and your 30s, is remember that your life is important and your mind and body are important, and think long term, because the things you do right now, your body and your mind will feel it much, much later. And that maybe is the most important thing. Okay, do take care of yourself, of your sleep, of your nutrition, of your hydration. You're going to be much happier. And when it comes to mind, especially when it comes to mind, I would say that the biggest piece of advice I would give to myself, and I feel like giving to the people listening to us, is to try to stabilize your dopamine levels. We live in a world where we got constant, immediate, instant gratification that is ruining our life. We think we are getting, video games and then YouTube videos, and then it's just like a child in a candy shop. But that, in the end of the day, makes us actually less happy because we tend to enjoy the little things less. When I did not have the internet, I enjoyed a nice morning reading a book for 3 hours in the garden, something that I find difficult to do now because of all the technology.
How many people can do that?
For some people, it's really difficult to even pay attention to something for 10 seconds. So I'm trying to restructure my life. I also struggle with this, of course, because technology is everywhere, right? Omnipresent. But I tend to believe that you can, as an individual, you can restructure, reshape your patterns if you are willing to do that. There's a lot of beautiful and interesting information about how to restructure your dopamine levels, and you should seek that kind of information. Watch a YouTube video; it's free, and implement the advice that the experts bestow upon us, and they do it for a reason.
And with that, we wrap up this very long interview. Thank you, Luca, for your precious time and sharing these life lessons, language lessons, and everything.
My pleasure.
I'm very humbled and honored to have you here. And for the maybe if you do not know Luca, you can follow him in through his YouTube channel, and I'm going to put links in the description, and also for his courses, bidirectional translation course, if you're interested to explore it more. And so happy language learning, and wish you all the best, guys. Greetings from Rome. Bye bye.
Ciao.
Thanks. Ciao.
Ragazzi, se volete studiare le lingue vi serve una stampante, perché il foglio batte lo schermo 10:1, anche se pesa soprattutto portarla a casa.